Now to this. That hacked email controversy involving British scientists is giving rise to doubts about global warming. The left says all this is another attempt to swift boat science. The right says no, it is a legitimate gotcha. Take a look at those pictures right there. One scientist is saying those pictures prove the Earth is in fact melting, or the snow caps are, and that the water will soon be rising. Well, the other side says, look, if we're warming up, no, that's not true. It's nothing but a natural thing. And anyone who believes otherwise is playing with the data for political reasons. I have spoken with two men who represent two opposing views on this. Their conversation continues online. Here now, that debate between James Balog of the Extreme Ice Survey and Mark Morano, editor of ClimateDepot.com.
I was a skeptic originally, but when I first learned how clear the evidence was embedded in the ice of Greenland, Antarctica, and all the alpine glaciers, I realized that climate change was real.
What is that what is that ice telling us before we go over to Mark and let him question your assertions? What does the ice specifically? What is it telling us?
The key fact is that we've got a record of global temperature variation that goes back 850,000 years now. And it shows a very clear cycling between warm and cold periods as caused by astronomical variations in the relationship of the Earth and the Sun. The natural processes generated 280 parts per million maximum in that whole period of nearly 1 million years. We are now at 387 parts per million in the atmosphere, and all of that rise from 280 to 387 has just happened in the past 200 years as a consequence of carbon fuel burning. So, yeah. You know, this is
which creates a greenhouse effect. Which creates a greenhouse effect, which warms the planet.
Yes, absolutely.
Final question for you before I go over to Mark. Do you feel like the grand consensus of scientific communities agree with what you just said?
Absolutely, positively. That record has been worked over and chewed over and vetted, studied every which way. These guys in the science community are unbelievably cautious, skeptical, and conservative by nature. They don't jump to fast conclusions as the right wing is trying to paint them right now. They are very meticulous, self-critical kinds of people.
Okay, let's give Mark a shot at that. These are self-critical people who are very meticulous, and they're very careful with their science, and they're not going to go off on tangents or make stuff up. Mark, you respond to that.
Well, first of all, the ClimateGate emails reveal the upper echelon of United Nations scientists fretting over the lack of global warming, being unable to explain it, talking about geoengineering, it won't work because they can't explain the climate system enough, saying it's a travesty they can't explain the warming, trying to keep skeptical papers out of the peer review process, basically doing what they could to keep the grand narrative of man driving global warming. I have to laugh, this CO2. We've had ice ages with many times higher CO2 than we have today. We've had warm periods much warmer than today with many times lower CO2. So the idea that CO2 is driving the warming, and if you look at the ice core data, temperature goes first, followed by CO2. And you know, the bottom line is there are hundreds of factors that influence global temperature. Everything from tilt to the Earth's axis, tilt to the Earth's axis, clouds, sun, solar system, ocean cycles. You can't narrow it down. The scare is ending in peer-reviewed studies.
Let me just stop you on one point. Is that true, James? I mean, he makes an interesting point. Look, yeah, maybe we're going through one of these phases in our planet right now that we've gone through before. Maybe we went through a bunch of them before we started recording this kind of stuff. Could he be right?
Yeah. Sure, he could be right. And candidly, when I started on this Extreme Ice Survey project, I wondered exactly the same thing. But what I learned as I opened myself to the facts that were coming in from the field and from all the measurements is that Earth is far outside the natural bounds of natural behavior. Again, nature naturally, all of those processes that Mark is talking about have created no more than 280 parts per million of carbon dioxide, and usually far less. But we are way beyond that. We're more than 100 parts per million beyond what nature has naturally done in the past million years. That's a big deal.
And you know what?
Because you can't change the physical chemistry of the atmosphere.
The father of climatology, Reed Bryson, who just died last year, a pioneer, said you could go outside and spit and have the same effect as doubling CO2.